Jaime, Jaime, tú estás en español, ¿no? ¿No? ¿Quién está en español? Jules. Ah, ya, Jules. Ya, ahorita vamos a ir en inglés, ¿ah? Que siempre haya alguien ahí. Sí, probando. Ok, español, por favor. Español, está Eva Rodríguez. Español. 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 Piso, probando. 1, 2, 3. Probando 1, 2, 3, piso. Probando 1, 2, 3, piso. Probando 1, 2, 3, piso. Para la transmisión. Probando 1, 2, 3.
¿Sabes que tienes los intérpretes están ahí? Puedes aprovechar los intérpretes. Los intérpretes
Están
están
ahí.
en las cabinas, ¿sí?
Verónica.
Los intérpretes están
Los
ahí.
traductores están en la cabina.
Sí, sí,
Mejor
sí.
probamos con ellos también. Sí, ok. Ya. Esa es la indicación que me han dado acá. Ok.
¿Cómo va todo?
Ok, probando. Ok, probando español y piso, por favor. Piso, probando. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Ok, probando. 1, 2, 3. Piso. 1, 2, 3. Piso. Piso, probando piso. Probando piso. Probando piso. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Probando piso.
¿Copiaste la intérprete? ¿Copiaste la intérprete?
Eh,
En el canal 1, la intérprete, ¿la copiaste?
sí, estamos probando ahorita con español.
Claro.
Sí, ok.
Ella estaba hablando.
Verónica,
Estaba hablando.
la traductora de español está hablando ahorita. Sí, exactamente.
Ahorita sí.
Entonces yo voy a hablar en piso, ¿sí? Ok, probando piso. Probando piso. Y lenguaje en español. Probando piso. 1, 2, 3. Y la traducción en español. Probando 1, 2, 3, piso. Ok. Ok, la traducción de español, por favor, diga español. Diga español, piso. Probando 1, 2, 3, 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 piso. Ok, por favor, inglés, que inglés.
English. This is English booth. Testing. English booth. Testing. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Testing the English booth. Testing the English booth. Can you hear? Testing the English booth. English. Testing the English booth. 1, 2, 3.
Francés, por favor, repita francés. Probando piso, 1, 2, 3. Probando piso, 1, 2, 3. Probando piso. Probando piso, 1, 2, 3. Probando piso, 1, 2, 3. Seguimos en francés, por favor. 1, 2, 3, probando piso. Probando piso, 1, 2, 3. Probando piso. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Probando 1, 2, 3. Probando 1, 2, 3. Probando 1, 2, 3. Probando 1, 2, 3. Ok, muchas gracias, francés. Seguimos con portugués. Portugués, por favor, repita. Probando piso, 1, 2, 3. Probando piso, 1, 2, 3. Probando piso. Probando piso, 1, 2, 3. Probando piso, 1, 2, 3. Perfecto, muchas gracias. Gracias.
adoptó en Lima, por unanimidad de todos sus Estados miembros, la Carta Democrática Interamericana. Esta resolución fue resultado de una solicitud que la Cumbre de las Américas, reunida en abril de ese año en Quebec, le hiciera a la organización regional. Esta carta es el último eslabón de un desarrollo pionero del sistema interamericano desde la adopción en Bogotá en 1948 de la carta por la que se constituyó la Organización de los Estados Americanos, OEA. El contexto era muy diferente del de décadas anteriores.
The decade of the 90s was unique for the hemisphere. In South America, military regimes realized that modern societies were too complicated to be ruled with bayonets. In Central America, the Cold War, the proxy war between the United States and the Soviet bloc had worn itself out, and there was a sense that the only solution was not military, but political and democratic.
La Carta Democrática aprovecha ese momento para definir que la democracia representativa es la suma de muchos elementos que la integran y enumera los esenciales, entre ellos el respeto a los derechos humanos y las libertades fundamentales, el acceso al poder y su ejercicio con sujeción al Estado de Derecho, la celebración de elecciones libres, periódicas y transparentes, el régimen plural de partidos y organizaciones políticas y la separación e independencia de los poderes públicos. Pero ello no bastaba.
En muchos de los países de América del Sur, los países de América Central también estaban terminando largos periodos dictatoriales, generalmente terminados además en conflictos y guerras civiles muy dolorosas. Entonces, el primer trabajo en el marco de la OEA es no queremos más los golpes militares. Ese fue el primer entorno. Y sobre eso hubo un consenso a principios de los 90. Pero luego se fueron produciendo estas nuevas modalidades de alteración. Ahí se genera un nuevo consenso en la región. Tampoco queremos estas nuevas modalidades de alteración del orden constitucional.
Esas nuevas modalidades tenían una forma específica. Gobiernos legítimamente electos eran los que subvertían la democracia. Así, la Carta contempló mecanismos para afrontar el caso de una amenaza, una alteración grave o incluso una ruptura del orden democrático.
La defensa interamericana de la democracia es el concepto fundamental. También lo es la democracia como derecho de los pueblos de las Américas. Esos son los dos puntos en los cuales la Carta Democrática Interamericana introduce también fuertes innovaciones en cuanto a que no solamente es una responsabilidad de cada país defender la democracia en el hemisferio, sino que son todos los países responsables de la defensa de la democracia en el hemisferio y la Secretaría General.
En los mismos instantes en que en Lima se aprobaba la Carta, el mundo se convulsionaba por los atentados en Nueva York y Washington. Al día siguiente, el mundo ya no sería igual. Gracias a la Carta, tampoco lo sería la manera en la que las Américas protegían la democracia. Los Estados miembros de la OEA se habían dado sólidos argumentos para defenderla conjuntamente.
Los fundamentales son el compromiso por parte de todos los Estados americanos de aceptar estas modalidades por las cuales otros Estados pueden actuar para promover y inclusive la Secretaría General, para promover y consolidar la democracia en un Estado. Esto ha sido absolutamente pionero. Recién ahora, otros sistemas regionales están incorporando normas similares.
A 2 décadas de su creación, las fortalezas de la Carta son claramente visibles.
Bueno, la Carta Democrática Interamericana yo diría que tiene tres formas de aplicación. Una es la parte de lo que es lo medular de la Carta, que yo siempre he llamado un programa de la República Democrática. Y por lo tanto, ahí el desafío es ver hasta qué punto los países, dentro de un régimen democrático, van cumpliendo los distintos aspectos de la Carta. El segundo aspecto es el que dice relación con la aplicación de la Carta cuando hay riesgo de ruptura de la democracia. Esto tiene una cierta limitación porque son los países, los gobiernos tienen que pedir esa actuación, y el desafío más grande cuando se produce, ya cuando la Asamblea General determina que se ha producido una ruptura de la democracia.
Desde su adopción, la Carta Democrática Interamericana ha sido invocada en al menos 16 oportunidades, haciendo uso de sus funciones preventiva y restaurativa en Venezuela, Bolivia, Perú, Ecuador, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, El Salvador, Haití, entre otros. En todos esos casos, la Carta fue la guía y la referencia para las decisiones de los Estados miembros. Pero el gran éxito de la Carta está en lo que no se ve. La Carta es una nueva expresión de valores y principios democráticos colectivos.
La Carta Democrática es una suerte de constitución política, ética y moral del ejercicio de la democracia en el continente. Es única en el mundo porque no solamente defiende la democracia desde un punto de vista declarativo, sino también establece procedimientos precisos y puntuales para cuando existe alguna ruptura o amenaza al orden democrático, y le da también, tanto a los países miembros como al secretario general, instrumentos valiosos para poder actuar en situaciones de emergencia. Creo que la Carta Democrática, así lo hemos constatado, es una guía de acción para gobiernos, para ciudadanos, para partidos políticos, para empresarios, para todas las organizaciones de la sociedad civil, de cuál es la aspiración democrática en la que estamos todos inscritos.
La vigencia de la Carta va sin duda de la mano de la vigencia de la democracia, que es esencialmente un trabajo en permanente construcción.
Democracias perfectas todavía no las hay. Tenemos democracias perfectibles o muy perfectibles, pero sí la Carta Democrática Interamericana ha sido una referencia fundamental de nuestros países, de actuar en consonancia con la misma, de no apartarse de la misma, o de que cuando se apartan de la misma existen mecanismos de sanciones y de acciones del sistema interamericano para volver a encauzar los mismos a la vía democrática. Es un trabajo permanente. Es un trabajo continuo y es un trabajo que siempre sufre retrocesos en ese proceso.
La democracia no ha ido mucho más allá de lo que era hace 10 años atrás, pero tampoco ha retrocedido tan sustantivamente en la región. Existen en ella grandes posibilidades democráticas y grandes desafíos. Desde el punto de vista de la génesis de los gobiernos, todavía las cosas están razonablemente bien. Y desde el punto de vista de la caída de gobiernos tampoco han habido demasiadas situaciones así. Efectivamente hay algunos problemas de derechos humanos y de democracia no resueltos, pero yo creo que en general la Carta Democrática Interamericana sigue vigente.
Que la Carta está viva lo demuestra su adaptabilidad a las nuevas exigencias, como la de la igualdad de género.
La Carta Democrática Interamericana es un instrumento poderoso, es un acuerdo entre los estados, que le da una ruta sobre los conceptos de democracia y que lo liga a un apellido poderoso que es la representatividad. Y justamente este concepto de representatividad de la Carta Democrática nos permite colocar esta reflexión feminista en términos de una democracia paritaria que nos permita accesar a los espacios y estar representadas en la misma dimensión que la población está constituida. Si somos la mitad de mujeres y la mitad de hombres, así debe ser el espejo de la representación.
Un pasado exitoso y un presente vibrante no significan, sin embargo, un futuro asegurado. Prolongarla en el futuro es obra de todas y todos.
El mejor funcionamiento democrático implica democracias más eficientes. Si vamos en el camino de la Carta Democrática Interamericana, si todos nuestros países fueran en el camino de la Carta Democrática Interamericana, estaríamos definitivamente en el más pleno ejercicio de mejores democracias, de instituciones más fuertes y más eficientes. Para mí es esta Constitución de las Américas, hay que preservarla, hay que fortalecerla, hay que hacerla vigente en los hechos, en las acciones, en el compromiso de los países. Los contenidos están muy bien, son perfectos, son los justos, son los que corresponden.
a los estados de derecho democráticos que deben tener la región. Es el deber ser. Entonces es nuestro compromiso el de hacerla funcionar de la mejor forma y hacia eso debemos ir.
afternoon, everyone.
Bienvenidos a este diálogo
Welcome to
con los
this
observadores
dialogue with the
permanentes
permanent
que se celebra en el marco del
being held
52º
at this,
periodo de sesiones de la Asamblea General de la
52nd
Organización de los
regular
Estados
session of the
Americanos.
Organization of American
Brindo un
States,
especial saludo a los
General Assembly,
observadores permanentes,
and
países
I
amigos,
warmly welcome
a
all
quienes
the permanent
agradecemos su valiosa
observers,
participación y
friends,
apoyo técnico y
whose,
financiero a los trabajos y
contribution,
proyectos de la
we are
organización.
very grateful for the work
Antes de
that this
iniciar
organization
nuestro
carries out.
intercambio,
Before
deseo
starting
solicitar
this
a nuestros
exchange, I would like
distinguidos
to ask
expositores
our
que,
distinguished
de acuerdo al
speakers,
reglamento, cada intervención se
according
limite
to the rules of
estrictamente a un
procedure,
máximo
that
de
you
4
keep
minutos.
your remarks to a maximum
De
of
esta
4
manera podemos
minutes.
garantizar
That way
que nuestros
we can
oradores
be
puedan
sure that
pronunciarse,
each
así
one
como los
of
representantes
the,
de los Estados miembros.
speakers, will have a chance to speak
Dicho
as long
esto,
as the member states that said.
quiero señalar que es un honor moderar este tradicional espacio de confluencia y acercamiento entre los estados de las Américas y nuestros socios a nivel mundial. Doy asimismo la más cálida bienvenida al señor secretario general de la Organización de los Estados Americanos, doctor Luis Almagro, y al señor secretario general adjunto, embajador Néstor Méndez, a las y los distinguidos primeros ministros, ministros, viceministros, enviados especiales, representantes permanentes y observadores permanentes, y por supuesto a todas las delegaciones que nos acompañan.
The Organization of American States is the oldest regional body of the world that goes back to the first international American conference held in Washington, D.C. between October of 1898 8 and 90, in which it created its institutionality with the charter in Bogota from 48. And so it has become a leading player, contributing in a decisive way to consolidate its role as a guarantor of peaceful coexistence among the countries of the Americas, and to ensure the inclusive development of freedom and peace of its members. And over all of these years, the observer states play and have played and continue to play an important role in consolidating this organization, fostering and supporting projects to the benefit of the peoples of the Americas. That's why it's appropriate for us to express our deep gratitude for your presence here today in Lima, which is a sign of your ongoing solidarity and commitment to our hemisphere. Perhaps one of the most important contributions that Peru has made has been in its contribution to the Inter-American Charter, which is an instrument which reflects the political will of the countries of the Americas to consolidate the principles of democracy, rule of law, free exercise of freedoms of its peoples. And we recognize the peoples of the Americas have the right to democracy, and their governments have the obligation to promote it and to defend it. Despite that, there are risks still that hover over democracy, climate change, cross-cutting matters that we should will stress here at this assembly, inequality and discrimination. We need to be prepared on the basis of multilateralism, to defend the foundational or the bedrock of principles of the OAS that inspired it and that are more important now than ever. Before giving the floor to the Secretary General, I would like to reiterate our warmest welcome to the City of Lima. I extend that to all of the heads of delegation and delegates here with us today, and I hope that you enjoy your stay in our country. I'm certain that your contributions and initiatives will enrich the very necessary dialogue between our countries to the benefit of the peoples of the Americas. So thank you very much.
A continuación, ofrezco.
Next, I would like to give the floor to the Secretary General, Luis Almagro. Thank you. The pandemic has deepened the problems of poverty and inequality in all of the countries of the Americas. The role of the permanent observers is key for us to be able to bring together the right policies to ensure economic recovery and to find a path towards sustainable development. Foreign Minister Landa and heads of member states and observers, it's important for us to kick off the GA with this dialogue with the permanent observers, for us to exchange with our partners ideas, experiences, and joint activities to the benefit of the peoples of the Americas. Thanks to the partnership we have with the permanent observers, the organization and its member states are better poised to address structural vulnerabilities as we come out of the pandemic. I would like to underscore the leadership of the government of Peru that stresses at the GA the historic debt that we have vis-a-vis the most vulnerable among us who suffer daily from discrimination and poverty. The pandemic deepened these wounds. The region of the Americas has the deepest inequalities. Inequalities and poverty still beset the region. These are women, indigenous women, Afro-descendants, groups which historically have been subject to discrimination, LGBTI populations who have seen the scale tip against them. And we need to strive more to achieve social mobility and equality. Tocqueville said that equality is what generates democracy. Equal opportunities and creating a critical mass to that effect are a critical aspect of the Charter. And this is expressive of social justice and that are and other principles intrinsic to democracy. The Inter-American Democratic Charter recognizes the essential role of the fight against poverty to promote and consolidate democracy. In the current context in which We seek to avoid a new debt crisis, and we are putting the finishing touches on restructuring our finances. We turn to the observer countries and the creditor countries and multilateral groups to assist in this economic recovery of the region. According to ECLAC, poverty in our region would reach this year 33.7%, 1.6% higher, percentage points higher than last year. This poverty, the face of this poverty is Afro-descendants, indigenous people, LGBTI persons, women. These populations are victims of climate change, migration. From the standpoint of cooperation, the OAS undertakes different projects to civilize, to make visible the voice of people among our populations, and among the initiatives, we have carried out programs to promote the involvement of indigenous and Afro-descendant leaders in the inter-American system, and a pilot project on digital education for adult indigenous persons. We foster the Indigenous Forum with over 200 leaders to work in tourism and to foster indigenous tourism and to address human rights among different ethnic groups. The ICHR has created a rapporteurship on the rights of Afro-descendant persons and against racial discrimination. We also work on violence and discrimination against women, children, adolescents, and we strengthen capacities to integrate migrants and asylum seekers and refugees. These pressing issues call for multilateral responses, and we make an appeal to observers to support the region on these topics. Mandela said that mass poverty are scourges in our time that should be classified along with slavery and apartheid as social ills. We hope that the participation of observers at this General Assembly will make it possible for us to ensure that multilateralism will help us to bring dignity to the most vulnerable among us. Thank you very much, Secretary General. We open the floor to the ministers, foreign ministers of member states that in advance have been given the opportunity to speak. Costa Rica is recognized. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Costa Rica is grateful for this opportunity to dialogue with permanent observers, allies who contribute to promoting and strengthening the pillars of this organization about our interests, common interests and challenges. I know it's not necessary for us to delve into the different challenges that we face in the process of recovery, given the global crises, but I would reiterate how important your role is, our strategic partners, to develop projects and programs on key issues such as closing gaps, inequalities, protecting the environment, and fighting against climate change, assisting those populations that are most vulnerable, challenges that we face as a result of growing migration, among other things. All of these efforts that seek to enable us to achieve sustained recovery with a human rights focus. On that, I would stress three matters which are of importance to Costa Rica: the migrant population and refugee seekers, climate change, and access to international cooperation and financial resources. On migration, Costa Rica faces a huge challenge. Asylum and refugee status seekers, we are the second largest recipient of these asylum and refugee status seekers, and fourth worldwide. To tackle this challenge in a comprehensive and responsible way, we need a migratory solution with lasting solutions, focusing our efforts on migrants under the principle of shared responsibility, burden sharing, and international solidarity. We recognize the contribution that the observer countries have made that are a part of the platform supporting the regional framework to find solution, MERPS, and the events of solidarity, which was celebrated last September 21st within the framework of the GA of UN in New York under the chairmanship of Canada, and the first event held in San Jose, Costa Rica, SICA, chaired by Spain. I would also take this opportunity to thank Spain, which made the first contribution to MERPS, and we would prevail upon permanent observers and donors and member states to make voluntary contributions to this fund by way of complementing the efforts that countries such as Costa Rica have made to offer sufficient care to this population. Now, the big challenge that we all face is to address the triple world crisis: climate change, loss of biodiversity, and pollution. On that, I would recognize those countries that have joined Costa Rica with initiatives such as the HACK Coalition for Nature and Persons and the ambitious coalition to eliminate plastic pollution. Costa Rica will continue to contribute as best it can to multilateral efforts to tackle these global crises. And as a part of this effort, we will be making an appeal, a declaration of peace for the ocean within the context of the third UN conference on the ocean from 20 to 25th that Costa Rica and France will co-host. Lastly, but not less important, I would like to mention the initiative promoted by Costa Rica from ECLAC to head up the effort of Latin American and Caribbean countries under the concept of transitional development. We seek more allies to bring about a real impact, to cause transformation in our development agendas such that we can positively address world crises. Mr. Chairman, it's only by working together that we will be able to tackle these untold challenges that we face and not leave anyone behind. I reiterate my thanks to the permanent observers for your contribution and for working with us in our region to achieve our transition toward development and to do so in a resilient and inclusive way. Thank you. Now, I would ask the Foreign Minister of Suriname, Ambassador Ramdien, to speak and try to keep that within 4 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman and Secretary General, Assistant Secretary General, our colleagues and permanent observers, all present. First of all, thank you very much for hosting this 52nd OAS General Assembly in Peru. It's always a pleasure to be here. I want to also thank at the outset all permanent observers for their contribution which you have made over the past years to the organization. It's clear now that after so many years you are an integral part and an important part of the organization and its capabilities. I don't think I say something wrong when I say that you are considered valuable partners of the Organization of American States. So with that, I hope that you will continue your efforts, you will redouble your efforts to support the organization in its work to make life better in the Americas. Mr. Chairman, we live in uncertain times. We have so many global challenges, we have regional challenges, and we have national challenges. I don't need to repeat them, but it's all surrounding the international global conflicts, our regional insecurities, the food security, fuel security issues, as well as COVID-19. Many countries have not recovered as yet, and then the economic decline, which was already there before even COVID-19 started, and the incredible debt burden. So when we live in such a world, we expect that we all work together, that there is a strong cooperation among member states, but also with our partners on the other side. Clearly, we depend on each other. In our view, no country alone can provide security, peace, and prosperity to the citizens alone, on their own. We all need to work together. So, in my view, permanent observers have an even more important role to play today, also in their own interest. It's not only about providing some resources to create prosperity and sustainable development, but it's also, from your own political perspective, important to make sure that there is sustainable development. Of course, you benefit from the fact that there is, apart from the United Nations General Assembly, the OAS provides you with one platform at one time to meet 35 member states. That's a unique opportunity to engage, but I think what you're giving back is also important. Mr. Chairman, in the world we live in, and I'm focusing on our own region now, we need a strong, we need a united, inclusive, rule-based multilateral system. And I think it's important that we discuss that objective based on the original purpose and principles of the organization based on the Bogota Charter. We need such a multilateral system based on principles, values, and norms at its core. The OAS is important. It delivers to the member states, but it can do more. And it must be able to deliver even more towards prosperity and peace to the diversity which is characterizing our own hemisphere. So with this, I call both on our own organization as on the permanent observers to continue supporting this important inter-American organization. The Secretariat and its divisions is doing a great job in providing that kind of sustainable development efforts. But I would like these efforts to be focused on, in this case, on 4 specific areas. One is economic development, especially that of small, vulnerable economies in our own hemisphere. Climate change adaptation. We are promising, but we don't see the delivery. I must be frank on this. Global commitments are made, but not delivered. It's time to deliver. Education, because our people need to be able to progress. Health infrastructure, especially in the post-COVID area. And I believe that with that focus, our partners on the other side will certainly know where to put their resources and contribute to the benefit of our own hemisphere and its people. I thank you.
Thank you, His Excellency. A continuación, invito.
We now ask for the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Panama to take the floor. Thank you. Thank you. I add my words to those of Albert on our region and the entire world, who today face very complex times because of the pandemic, because of the far-flung conflicts. There are very dark predictions for what befalls our region, and I think we must adopt a local perspective and each of us focus on what is our own to do, including those of our observers, to try to keep afloat and move forward. But that isn't the route if we wish to be successful. The challenges we are facing do not have a solution without a unique and regional agenda with all of your support. In that spirit, let me point out one of the issues that is part of our common regional agenda: irregular migration. And with those who might be disbelieving and not think that we have talked, who might think we have talked too much about this recently, the fact is that in the last year and a half, we had to call an alarm to the worldwide phenomenon that had touched our own region with an unprecedented wave of migrants, which we managed to control in an effective way. We had mostly Haitians living in South America that were migrating northwards, and we were successful at that time in addressing and controlling that wave of migrants. But today, I am before you again, sounding the alarm, asking for help and proposing that we work together. In my remarks, I'll attempt to be brief. This migration has three characteristics, and I would like to propose a solution. One, the face of the migrants today are different. We are today facing a wave of Venezuelan migrants. We've worked from 1,000 migrants in 2021 to 111,000 in the remainder of this year, an increase of nearly 350,000. This is an experience without any precedent, and this from Panama, the country that has more Venezuelans per capita in our continent. If this new wave of migration must be an alarm for all of it, also must provoke our solidarity and cooperation. Misinformation is the second characteristic. We find that those who profit of this situation of human misery have lied about many things, including the possibility of receiving refugee status and welcome in the United States. Panama, which has the hardest border with a jungle, knows of thousands of migrants who say that if they had known what they had to go through to migrate through Panama, would never have left their countries. But the information that is shared is to take on this northern adventure. And thirdly, the characteristic is that of organized crime. Once again, we've seen organized criminal organizations with networks and capacity to organize and operate in all of our territories that charge thousands of dollars for each and every soul that they are able to convince to travel northwards. The effect of these organized gangs, of these criminal organizations, is real, and we will only be successful in countering them if we work together. We've discovered routes marked on trees with Crendarawa and Clan del Golfo criminal organizations, the cartels. They have opened and become masters of these territories. What is our proposal? Migration can only be safe and humane if it is controlled. And we face today a situation of crisis and a lack of control. And we must work together to solve this. How do we do so? Madam Minister, could you conclude? We must focus on the new face of these migrants and the route it has taken. Panama is the only country that offers shelter, lodging, but we have spent all of our resources and are now exceeding our capacity to handle this crisis. Please help us and help us to be of help to others. Thank you, Madam Minister. I now give the floor to Julio Cesar Arriola, the Foreign Minister of Paraguay. You have the floor, Excellency. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Foreign Minister of Peru, Cesar Landa, distinguished foreign ministers, Secretary General and Assistant Secretary General, heads of delegations, and permanent observers. I would like to say good afternoon to our dear permanent observers who are here and faced with this uncertain and complex international panorama, as my colleagues have eloquently addressed. The active participation of permanent observer member states is of particular importance and helps us to exchange opinions, perceptions on the various challenges that our world faces. We note that the continent of the Americas is a zone of peace, and we call on all regions to follow this example with a call to respectful and tolerant dialogue. Paraguay reaffirms its commitment to continue working together and underscore the importance of cooperation and international solidarity, both efforts that flourished during the period of the pandemic and should always be part of our action agenda. Let me underscore the important assistance offered by permanent observers who have made possible a number of different projects, the electoral observer missions among them, which contribute to transparency and credibility of elections and to strengthening democracy in our region and in our countries. We are convinced that permanent observer member states may be of use in supporting judicial facilitators and in the implementation on very important areas, which are the political commitment of the 9th Summit of the Americas. Let me end on this note. We need a mechanism of open, transparent, and respectful dialogue in the area of international law, which will offer us the opportunity to learn from the experiences in international law of our permanent observer member states, which will aid our own efforts for the integral, sustainable development of the Americas. Thank you, Minister Arriola, for your words. We also thank the foreign ministers of Costa Rica, Panama, and Paraguay for honoring us with your comments. We now move to the first round of interventions from our permanent observer states. We'll begin with Spain, Italy, France, and the Holy See. It's a pleasure to welcome the Secretary of State for Spain. You have the floor, sir, for 4 minutes. Thank you, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Peru, Mr. Secretary General of the OAS, gentlemen and ladies, foreign ministers, working together against discrimination and inequality, as is the motto of this 52nd General Assembly, which has brought us here to Lima, means that we face new challenges and opportunities together. The oldest observer country among the permanent observers, Spain, celebrates a half-century presence here. This is a moment when we must all reflect on our work. Having just overcome the worst part of a global pandemic, which had its most significant effect in this continent and showed the fragility of our public health systems, the invasion of Ukraine by Russia also means we are concerned today for our system, our international system. In this context, Spain wishes to emphasize its commitment to the respect for sovereignty of all states, the respect for territorial sovereignty, and to work together for the defense of the international order. This General Assembly of the OAS will allow member states to work in a coordinated fashion in addressing global challenges that we face as a community. The energy crisis, food security, the commitment to health, the digital transition and the psychological effects of this, as well as facing inequality. The commitment of Spain with Latin America and the Caribbean, a key region for the defense of our democratic values and principles, leads us to work actively and multilaterally. I am proud to say that we are the first country to have signed an agreement with the IMF for 20% special drawing rights from Spain to the Fund for Fighting Poverty and Inequality. This will allow to address the challenges faced by lower and middle income countries, which, as you know, is a majority in our region. We also want to commit ourselves to strengthening the access to universal health. We're working very closely with the Pan American Health Organization, adding our efforts to contribute to a greater autonomy in the production of pharmaceuticals, and we have donated more than 22,000 doses of vaccines for Latin America and the Caribbean. The defense of rights of women and children is a priority for government, such as the one that I represent today, which has a feminist foreign policy. The gender gap is the most significant discrimination faced in our planet, and the Inter-American Commission of Women deserves our praise. And I also wish to congratulate the San Jose process. And we know that the Inter-American human rights system works under very difficult circumstances. As is the work of this General Assembly, we must recognize the particularly complex situation faced by this continent, not always understood by the world. Together with our partners, we follow very closely the security crisis in Haiti. We do not disregard the fact that there are many situations that should lead us to reflect in our continent that there is a particular unease with democracy. It isn't enough to be able to go to vote for the consolidation of democracy. We have to work intensely for our societies to be identified with their democratic political systems. Even if the most recent electoral processes have shown a respect for institutions and for democracy in Latin America, we wish the new governments that have been elected great success and are eager to see Colombia succeed in its search for total peace, which has so far eluded it so much. Spain has worked to bring the European Union closer to Latin America and the Caribbean, and this proximity will be one of the lines of actions which will guide our presidency of the Council during the second semester of 2023. Sir, could you conclude? Yes, let me then conclude restating the great appreciation on behalf of the Kingdom of Spain to this organization and the fundamental principles which inspire your work. Many thanks. I now ask His Excellency Michel Talay, Principal Director for Italy of the Italian Foreign Ministry, and reminding him that he has but 4 minutes.
Minister of Foreign Affairs of Peru, Your Excellency Luis Almagro, Secretary General, distinguished ministers, and dear colleagues. It is an honor and privilege for me to participate in this dialogue and confirm once more the Italian commitment with the region. I would like to thank Peru for hosting this assembly and especially this dialogue with the observers. I'm particularly delighted to be here because this year marks the 50th anniversary of Italy joining the Organization of American States in 1972 as permanent observer. Our government made then indeed a significant investment in multilateralism. Such an investment could not have been more valuable. The Western Hemisphere represented for us at the time, and indeed still represents nowadays, a natural and strategic partner. We share common values and interests, as well as a genuine friendship among our communities. We intend to build on those values and interests for an even stronger and ever stronger relationship. We consider the OAS a unique forum where the democratic, human rights, security, and development agenda of the region can and should be advanced. We want to be your best allies in this endeavor. Let me therefore seize the occasion to express our appreciation and gratitude to Secretary General Almagro for his leadership and unwavering dedication to building democracy, human rights, and the rule of law in the Americas. His motto, more rights for more people, should be the landmark of our common undertaking. But let me here also express our solidarity to the European External Action Service and the Netherlands for the recent unjustified disproportionate decisions by the government of Nicaragua to expel de facto the EU head of delegation and to cut diplomatic ties with the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Excellencies, Italy and the OAS have a long-standing tradition of fruitful cooperation. We have supported key programs and projects such as electoral observation, fighting corruption, strengthening women's leadership, institution strengthening, police cooperation, contrasting organized crime and drug trafficking, defending human rights, not to mention our long-standing commitment to the mission to support the peace process in Colombia. We remain committed to continue working with the organization in all these sectors and even more because we recognize the effectiveness of the OAS interventions and projects. Excellencies, the topic of the 52nd session of the OAS General Assembly, Together Against Inequality and Discrimination, is particularly timely and relevant. At the 10th Italy Latin American Conference, we devoted one panel of discussion to the people, starting anew from social cohesion, people at the heart of the recovery. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank once more again Secretary General Almagro and the many ministers and vice ministers of the region that attended the gathering, and to welcome them back to Rome in 1 year's time for the 11th edition. Italy's goal is to promote an inclusive and resilient sustainable growth that leaves no one behind. Our priorities must be to restore the health of the planet and of our economies for the ultimate benefit of women and men who inhabit the earth today and those who will inhabit it in the years to come. We have to counter the adverse effects of the pandemic and at the same time face a new global challenges in the global energy and food sectors posed by the war that Russia has started with the attack to Ukraine. This crisis reinforces our bonds with the Western Hemisphere and urges us all to intensify cooperation to face those challenges. In this endeavor, we must remember that people are the real heart recipients and drivers of sustainable growth strategies and policies. Within this framework, combating inequality and gender inequality are goals that we must consider cross-cutting in our common agenda. To conclude, let me reiterate Italy's commitment to keep on working with the OAS and its member states on all its 4 pillars: democracy, human rights, security, and development, and on the new challenges we face with the confidence and trust that multilateralism is always our best ally for success. Thank you very much.
Agradezco su
Thank you. Thank you, Director Pala. And now offer the floor to the Foreign Minister, the Assistant Director for the Directorate for the Americas and Caribbean, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of France. Thank you, Mr. Secretary General, Mr. Minister, Madam and Gentlemen Minister, Madam and Gentlemen Representatives of Permanent Observers. Countering discrimination, the solidarity and universality of human rights is a concern that France fully shares. That's why here in Peru, we congratulate Peru for having chosen this theme, which shows our commitment to face this together with other countries. These difficulties are linked to the global crisis. Even though the pandemic's challenges wane, our societies are directly affected because of the invasion of Ukraine, not only economically, but also in terms of human rights. This challenges our own understanding of the relations between states, the right of people to determine their own destiny and to choose their alliances. The state of the Americas, member states of the Americas, like those of Europe, should be and are concerned about this in the United Nations, but also in the OAS. Our lines of action must be maintained the longer that the invasion of Ukraine and that certain territories of Ukraine are being annexed. This is also a challenge to our international relations, but also of our intrastate relations. The human rights and political rights of our populations are affected, and for this reason, we attach great importance to the work of the Organization of American States in the defense of rights as well as electoral rights. Other challenges must also be important to fight long-term inequalities, social inequalities, and climate change. Faced with the challenges of the future and our capacity of responding to these alarming situations, France also looks for a single health between human, animal, and plant health. Faced with the challenges of climate change, the coordination of our efforts is essential. And that is also true for the defense of biodiversity. France, which co-presides with the United Kingdom and Costa Rica, the organization of countries that are committed to protecting 30% of marine territory from here to 2030. Another challenge has led us to organize in 2025 with Costa Rica the next conference of the United Nations on oceans. This commitment is part of our commitment of supporting this 52nd General Assembly of the Organization of American States. We must not forget this particular situations. I think particularly of the situation facing Haiti, which needs our common commitment to, again, establish security and the ordered work of its institutions. I think of the political and social crises affecting a number of countries in our region. Mr. Secretary General, Madam and gentlemen ministers, in fact, we must work together against inequality and discrimination. France, together with OAS and the countries of the Americas, is committed to being a trustworthy partner to defend the values of dignity and political freedom that bring us together, also to protect our ecological future. Thank you, Your Excellency Philippe Letria. I now invite Miroslav Waszowski, Undersecretary of State from the Secretariat of State of the Holy See. The Holy See congratulates on this occasion and thanks the Peruvian government for having welcomed us here and for organizing this event. The theme, Together Against Inequality and Discrimination, means for our delegation a recognition of the truth of our past and to address the present objectively, where we understand there are limits, but also the need and the wish to overcome our limits. Pope Francis has stated that there is still too much discrimination fed by a culture of ignorance and lack of understanding of the value of each person. The Holy Father has proposed on numerous occasions to work towards a culture of inclusion in which no one is marginalized or feels left out. All of our differences live together, enriching, illuminating reciprocally our experience. Many are the realities that make up our Western Hemisphere, and they are made evident amongst the discrimination or the inequality between the first populations, the first peoples of this continent, as well as the challenges facing our populations who face health crises, and this is true for our multi-ethnic community. The Holy See protects the dignity of all people, regardless of their personal or circumstantial condition. The contribution of each is not limited only to material contributions, but is also a message of hope to move forward and to progress. The values that we show to people, no matter what their situation, regardless of the vulnerable condition in which they live, will allow us to achieve an integration in a world that is ever more globalized. And this requires us to remember that strengthening the human person must be the goal of our societies. Those commitments, political and economic, from multilateral organizations cannot forget that the human person, with all of its dignity, must be the focus of our programs and of our work. And to this end, we must promote justice and solidarity. These are the principles that strengthen us as an entire community. This hemisphere has known conquest, struggles, and fights, but must not now accept a ideological colonization. We must recognize the deepest values and not discard our differences or our duties against the most fragile and weak among us. For this reason, the Holy See calls on a recognition of the dignity of each human being as created in the image of God, without forgetting the importance of the family, the rights of women and children, of migrants, and those in a vulnerable condition, as well as a respect for religious freedom, and not leaving aside our care for our common home. Mr. Chair, the Holy See values the work of the Organization of American States as a space for dialogue and cooperation among member states, where the exchange of ideas and commitments will allow us to defend the fundamental rights in a climate of respect. For this reason, as permanent observers, the Holy See follows closely our discussions here and continue to be committed that we may all work together towards an end of discrimination and inequality. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Monsignor Wachowski. And I give a welcome to the Prime Minister of Aruba as representative of the Kingdom of Holland. You have the floor.
Los Países Bajos.
Thank you very much. On behalf of Holland, I would like to thank the member states of the OAS for giving us the opportunity to hold this very important dialogue. Unfortunately, the COVID pandemic has exacerbated existing inequalities in the region and throughout the world. Inequality is not a phenomenon that just emerges all by itself. It's closely tied to a host of global challenges, among them climate change and food insecurity. We can only tackle these difficult challenges by working together. The Kingdom of the Netherlands is firmly committed to the efforts put forth by the OAS to strengthen democracy by supporting, among other things, the electoral mission observations and the annual diplomacy courses offered at The Hague for career diplomats. We also support the OAS work in promoting human rights through the Inter-American Human Rights Commission. That said, we bear witness to structural vulnerabilities such as a lack of social security given or social safety nets given informality and also shortcomings in education and health, which unfortunately only brings more pressure to human rights, inequality, and pressures on the rule of law. So we need to continue holding frank and critical discussions among ourselves. Unfortunately, that's not always possible. We regret the disproportionate decision adopted by Nicaragua last week to unilaterally break diplomatic ties with the Kingdom of Holland, striking against all the values we all appreciate. We are also very much concerned with the humanitarian crisis in Venezuela that is spilling over into a number of countries, including the Caribbean countries, a part of our kingdom. And so we appeal to all the interested parties to work toward stable, fair, and democratic transition. The impact of Russia's invasion of Ukraine is felt throughout the world, including in our region, and our political efforts, diplomatic efforts, should focus on finding ways of halting this act of aggression against Ukraine and all of the attendant suffering. Now, when we speak of inequality, we cannot overlook climate change, because if it is left unbridled, it will have a devastating effect on the most vulnerable among us. Countries of the region, Aruba, Curacao, St. Martin, are susceptible to the consequences of climate change. We are facing challenges resulting from climate change, especially those that have to do with mitigation and adaptation and resilience. In our capacity as partners on both sides of the Atlantic, we offer to cooperate to contain the vicious circle of organized transnational crime, corruption, and the negative effects in our societies and states. Instruments such as the San Jose Treaty can offer a great platform, and we are prepared to lead up that effort. Now, the countries of the Americas have natural resources, mineral resources, and therefore play an important role to protect biodiversity and working toward against climate change and energy transformation. We are eager to work together on these matters. So I hope for the OAS and its members a very fruitful trip, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak. Thank you very much, Minister. River Coys, I am grateful for all the very valuable interventions by Your Excellencies, permanent observers, and also for your commitment to dialogue, cooperation, and brotherhood with the peoples of the Americas. Your role at the OAS is a very vital role to move toward peace, development, democracy, and rights in our region. Hopefully, we can continue strengthening our historic ties. We now recognize the heads of delegations of the member states, and we would like to thank your excellencies for keeping your remarks to 4 minutes. I would invite the Foreign Minister of Guatemala to take the floor. Thank you very much. Cesar Landa, Foreign Minister of Peru, a great host, and ministers, ladies and gentlemen, heads of delegations of the different representations in this body, Secretary General, Assistant Secretary General, honorable delegates, permanent observers, ladies and gentlemen, a warm greeting from Guatemala on behalf of the President, Alejandro Yamatei. Now, as an active country in this organization, I would like to stress our commitment to the values of the Inter-American Charter. The foreign policy of Guatemala is based on multilateralism, peace, and liberty. And it's important for us to understand that these cross-cutting elements apply to all of those aspects of human beings, protecting one's life, essential rights, and to strike harmony with the environment where we live, especially to offer that protection for future generations. Now, my delegation appreciates your words, Mr. Chairman, and we would especially underscore the importance of the name given to this General Assembly. Together against inequality and discrimination from Guatemala's perspective, we place a premium on the commitments taken on by all of the members of the OAS to ensure together the necessary conditions for there to be development and well-being among all of the members of our societies, and also to ensure equitable societies, fair societies, so that we can have a better future for women, children, the disabled persons, and especially the elderly. Guatemala has much to underscore and to celebrate today, but we would start by underscoring those programs that we have undertaken with OAS and all of you who are a part of this, the program to ensure the right to food and food security in the Americas. Another example is to promote quality education, to strengthen the tools of education to economically empower women. The President of the OAS, I think all of the countries that contribute to the MIRST platform, especially the contribution that Spain has made to that mechanism. I would also underscore that Guatemala, working in the context of strengthening dialogue and cooperation, thanks to the efforts that we have carried out, working with the European Union, Italy, France, United States, and other countries. So, colleagues, friends, Mr. Chairman, in these challenging times in which we face challenges about which we have spoken, we have the opportunity to work together around these values of liberty. Moving forward, our country is one of cultural richness, goes back thousands of years, and that means that we have borne witness of the strategic role that the OAS plays. And at this meeting, I think we have the opportunity to be inspired, to inspire each other, so that we can rethink our partnerships, strengthen our partnerships, and to ensure the dialogue here at this General Assembly, so that we can come up with new programs to the benefit of all of us. Thank you very much. Thank you, Minister Flores, for your message. Now, Honorable Minister of Foreign Relations of St. Lucia, Alva Baptiste.
Chairman, distinguished colleague ministers, heads of delegation, Mr. Secretary General, Assistant Secretary General, our permanent observers, ladies and gentlemen. My delegation and I are pleased to be part of this very important discourse and to engage on matters of mutual interest. In keeping with interventions made by my colleague ministers of foreign affairs, the Secretary General, and OAS permanent observers, in the 4 minutes allotted to me, I wish to accentuate, though in capsule form, a central aspect of this dialogue, that of inclusive management of the pandemic and post-COVID economic recovery, taking into account the urgent need to address inequality and discrimination. Chair, given the gravity of the problems of inequality, this dialogue cannot be just a normal conversation, because an effective response to inequality in an era of neoliberal globalization mandates practical commitments. Chair, with your permission, I wish to adumbrate the morbid scenario of inequality in an era of neoliberal globalization. A World Bank report of 2012 observed that between 1981 and 2008, the number of persons confronted with the objective reality of living between $1.25 per day, an abject poverty line, and the $2 per day poverty line doubled. An Oxfam report observes that 3.7 billion people who comprise the poorest half of the world experience no improvement in their wealth, while the richest 1% of the world's population in 2017 generated 82% of the world's wealth generated in 2017. An Inter-American Development Bank report shows that the Caribbean is particularly vulnerable to the impacts of the COVID-19 because inequality is both deep and spread out over multiple dimensions, from race and gender to unequal access to education, health, and other services. It concluded by saying that the region will continue to suffer both from vulnerability to external shocks and the social challenges unless it adopts a multidimensional approach to the monumental challenge of inequality. Chair, as I prepare to close, I want to indicate that we have a monumental problem that requires us to strengthen our internal machinery in this hemisphere and respond to it. Vulnerable economies in our region were confronted with decline in official development assistance, erosion of trade preferences, and of course, we see climate change continuing. It's decimating much across the environmental, social, and economic fabric of our region. As we were about to chart the post-COVID-19 trajectory, we saw the war in Ukraine that has not only exacerbated the fiscal drag, but heightened interest rates. And because of GDP per capita in our region, we no longer qualify for concessionary financing. So this is one of the areas that we must respond to. As time is against me, Chair, I wish to close by, of course, acknowledging the importance of dialogue like this, that we can come together, discuss the spectrum of issues that are relevant to us, as we focus on common objectives of humanity. Regionalism is important, Mr. Chair, and I end at this juncture. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Minister Baptiste. Ahora procedo.
I give the floor now to Honorable Eamon Courtenay, Minister of Foreign Relations of Belize.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Foreign Minister Landa, Secretary General Almagro, Assistant Secretary General Mendes, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It is a pleasure for me to participate in this dialogue with the permanent observers of the OAS. Many of you have a long-standing positive relationship with the OAS, and we welcome the continued commitment of your governments to the organization. Your presence here today reflects the vital role your contributions play in strengthening the OAS. I have the unfortunate opportunity to follow the distinguished Foreign Minister of St. Lucia Everything he said I associate with because he encapsulated in his most eloquent way the challenges that we face and the objectives which this organization should address in the immediate term. I therefore will shorten my address. The economic recovery of our nation relies on cooperation from our partners. As middle-income countries, a designation that misrepresents the truth of our development positions, we have little access to development financing owing to the use of GDP per capita as the principal criterion for access to concessional financing. This is crippling to our nation's development, and this is why Belize will continue to resolutely advocate for the elaboration of a multidimensional vulnerability index to finally give effect to the special case of small island and low-lying coastal developing states in the international financial system. This new index is necessary to enable our nations to rebound from the devastating setbacks from the pandemic. We seek your support in this endeavor. Colleagues, over the years, we have seen your tremendous support in the areas of democracy and human rights. Belize continues to be ranked among the most free and vibrant democracies in the Americas with an excellent human rights record. Our respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms, free and fair elections, transparency, non-discrimination, and the rule of law is unwavering and second to none. However, as we work together to resolve democratic challenges, let us not forget the two other pillars of the organization. Without investment in development and security, our nations cannot prosper. Today, the world is confronting unprecedented challenges that not only threaten the international order, but threatens mankind's very existence. Your support in all pillars of the organization is therefore crucial. Whilst the Organization of American States is not a funding institution, we do find it important to make the point here that substantial additional resources are needed in IFIs and MDBs, accessible to small countries to meet the very serious challenges we face, challenges exacerbated by the effects of the illegal, unprovoked war by Russia against Ukraine. The theme of this General Assembly is Together Against Inequality and Discrimination. One of the most challenging problems facing our hemisphere is mass migration. At a time when irregular migrants are being discriminated against, criminally prosecuted, and losing their lives, Belize has decided that a more humanitarian approach is needed as we discharge our sacred responsibility as a proud nation in the family of nations. In August of this year, the government of Belize commenced an amnesty to give regular status to the thousands of irregular migrants in Belize. More work needs to be done to create a fair, equal, and inclusive society, but working together, we can achieve it. I thank you.
Thank you, Minister Courtney.
I'm pleased to give the floor to Honorable Frederick Mitchell, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Bahamas.
I want to thank you for convening this forum to facilitate dialogue with the permanent observers of this organization. So at the outset, I want to laud the permanent observers for their commitments to collaborate with the OAS and its member states and for your alignment with the high principles and objectives outlined in the OAS Charter. We look forward to exploring opportunities to strengthen and scale up cooperation through the OAS in the days ahead. For the Bahamas, the OAS is an important partner because it is one of the few institutions where there is, generally speaking, universal access to programming to all of its membership, irrespective of perceived development level or need. And the institution has a comparative advantage few can match in delivery of technical assistance, training, and capacity building, and with its convening power for agenda setting and knowledge sharing. We particularly see tangible evidence of these virtues in the development and security work being done at the OAS. We see an urgent need for the OAS to scale up its support to member states on climate action, given the mandates agreed upon by our heads at the recent 9th Summit of the Americas. In particular, we look forward to scaled-up efforts around training and capacity building and climate-smart skills, and the convening of a forum to engage with hemispheric development finance institutions on the challenges that persist around access to and adequacy of climate finance within the Americas. Support for strengthening capacity to mitigate risk from disasters is also an urgent priority for the Bahamas and the wider Caribbean region. We know that many of you are doing great work in these areas, and we invite you to consider partnering with the OAS on these efforts. We're pleased to advise that the new OAS mandate for the creation of a language training and certification program for citizens of the hemisphere. And we would encourage permanent observers that share the goal of promoting multilingualism to collaborate with the Secretariat to help us together move towards a more interconnected Americas and world. We also see collaborative opportunities in the security sphere, in particular around programming to strengthen member states' capacity to deter trafficking in persons, drugs, and guns, and to win the global fight against terrorism. I wish to advise that I have charged our permanent mission to the OAS with deepening and broadening cooperation with permanent observer missions, with a view towards enhancing collaboration on shared objectives and priorities between the Bahamas and your countries. We look forward to the fruits of this enhanced collaboration in the years ahead. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Minister Mitchell.
I would like to offer the floor to Her Excellency Laura Gil, Vice Minister of Multilateral Affairs of Colombia. Thank you very much. Your Excellency Cesar Landa, Foreign Minister of Peru, Luis Almagro, Secretary General of the OAS, ministers, heads of delegations, and representatives of observer states. Colombia appreciates the support that the permanent observers have offered to mechanisms and initiatives of the OAS, which move forward priorities of national policy. I am here to address three things, and first to thank you and to make a request and also to extend an invitation. The thank you is for the OAS and the states that finance it. We are grateful for the political and financial support given to the peace process, MAP OEA, and we trust that this will play a key role in materializing the total peace policy of Gustavo Petro's policy, the presidency of Gustavo Petro. We appreciate, thanks to Spain, the UK, Norway, Switzerland, Germany, and other countries that have contributed to this effort, which is also a vote of confidence, not only at the OAS, but in our country as well. Colombia thinks that the work being done on the ground by MAP-OEA is essential because it creates the conditions in different activities such as disarmament, and the contributions made by it have enabled the state to draw near to the communities and has built a bridge for a dialogue within a context of much conflict. We trust that the expertise of MAP-OAS will be key in the dialogue with illegal armed groups and in social dialogue as well, and engagement efforts. The mission continues to be a tool of cooperation that has proven itself to be indispensable, flexible, and useful, and has evolved over time, bolstering its capacity and its store of knowledge so that it can continue to help move Colombia toward total peace. Now, my request. I represent a government of change, and I invite you to look at the international stage and our multilateralism with new eyes. Many of the things that are on this organization's agenda need to be looked at anew. The security crisis in Haiti cannot be understood without seeing it from the standpoint of drug trafficking. The policy of fighting against drugs, as it has been done, needs to be overhauled. We would also invite you to take a look at that topic within this organization. And now the invitation. I extend an invitation to the region and to the observing countries. In Colombia, we have regularized 1.4 million Venezuelan citizens. Ladies and gentlemen, another million people are awaiting their document. Within a couple of months, we will have reached 2.4 million Venezuelans whose migratory status has been regularized in Colombia. And the challenge we face now is to integrate them into society. Socioeconomic integration has become our priority. It does us no good to extend that document if we don't achieve that integration. We are extremely grateful for the financing that observing countries of the OAS have given us, but I would like to say we don't just want to be held up as an example. We want to be held up as an example to be followed, a role model. That's why I would prevail upon the region for us to together tackle this challenge so that we can share in this effort. Thank you very much, Minister Gil. I give the floor to His Excellency Fernando Simas, the General Secretary of the Ministry of Foreign Relations of Brazil. Thank you very much, Minister Cesar Landa. We would like to thank you for your hospitality and for hosting the 52nd regular session of the General Assembly of the OAS. Ministers, heads of delegation, Secretary General Luis Almagro, Assistant Secretary General Nestor Mendez, ladies and gentlemen, permanent observers to the OAS. We're very pleased and very interested to take part in this dialogue with the permanent observers. We understand that engaging foreign partners of the OAS is a way of materializing the open and universal nature of the American continent. The dialogue and cooperation with the partners outside our region on our inter-American agendas enrich the work of our organization. At a time in which, slowly and collectively, we are overcoming the COVID-19 pandemic, which affected all of our societies, the topic chosen by Peru for this General Assembly, Together Against Inequality and Discrimination, is one more reason to bring together the countries of the Americas, our main partners outside the region, around common goals. The deepening socioeconomic and regional inequalities within a context of an asymmetrical globalization process, which is a source of concern for many of us, became that much more challenging and complex in recent times, given the world health crisis and rising geopolitical strife. These processes affect all of us and only raise the challenges we face to achieve sustainable development, to promote human rights, and to strengthen democracy. From that standpoint, progress made by the countries of the Americas on the four pillars of the Organization of American States are a regional value that should serve as a model for other partners to follow beyond our region. Also, our region also benefits in all of its dimensions from the exchange and cooperation with partners outside our region. And among what we have achieved in our continent, we've got the Democratic, Inter-American Democratic Charter and all of the attendant commitments to protect democratic values and democracy, all of which bind us. This commitment has enabled us to work together against the threats that would seek to undermine our institutions in our region, and we seek to project our democratic values beyond the Americas, and to build within the Inter-American region a robust human rights protection system with sound institutions such as the IACHR and the Inter-American Human Rights Court in San Jose, safeguarding the rights of our citizens, fighting against discrimination, and they also inspire other human rights systems throughout the world. We are convinced that the development pillar will take on even more importance on our agenda, the post-pandemic response, and building resilient societies as regards health is something else that is at the heart of this effort, as underscored by our host. So I would like to mention a few topics that are of concern to us: Haiti, Venezuela, Nicaragua. I would be remiss if I did not stress our ongoing concern about the deterioration of democracy in Venezuela and Nicaragua. We will work along with all of our colleagues here to achieve the objectives on that matter. Thank you very much, Secretary Simas. Now we will hear from the second group of speakers among the permanent observers, and I would remind you to keep your remarks to 4 minutes. Vice Minister of Foreign Relations of Australia, Tim Watts, you have the floor.
Thank you. Your Excellencies, members, observers, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honoured to be speaking with you today on my first visit to the region as a Minister, and I very much welcome Australia's permanent observer status to the OAS, the principal regional organisation in the Americas. It's a great opportunity to collaborate on issues of mutual interest, and I acknowledge the generous hospitality and productive meetings that I have received in Lima, and thank Secretary-General Almagro and Foreign Minister Landa for the warm welcome. It's an exciting time to build on the many similarities that connect our countries and regions. The world is emerging from the first global pandemic in over 100 years. Yet there are further challenges that we must confront together to reverse the effects of COVID-19 on development gains, including particularly to vulnerable groups such as the elderly, young people, and women and girls. But that's the value of dialogue with partners to overcome these challenges for the benefit of all. It's appropriate that the topic for Australia's first participation as a permanent observer is Together Against Racism and Discrimination. Australia is proud of its diverse heritage. We are a nation where half of our people were either born overseas or have a parent born overseas. Our people come from over 300 ancestries and speak over 350 languages. Australia is a nation that brings together people from across the world, a nation that shares common ground with so many of the world's peoples. Multiculturalism is in our nation's ethos. It is in our identity. We are also home to the oldest continuous culture on the planet that dates back more than 60,000 years. Let's reflect on that for a moment. More than 60,000 years, with over 250 Indigenous languages and 800 dialects, languages that connect people to country, culture, and ancestors. But we recognise that Indigenous Australians have not always shared in Australia's successes, and Australia has not always listened to the voices of our Indigenous peoples. The Australian government in which I serve is determined to make real progress on the national journey of healing with Indigenous Australians, the first peoples of our continents. This is at the forefront of our national and foreign policy agenda. Prime Minister Albanese has led calls to enshrine the voices of Indigenous Australians in our national identity and in our parliament. And the government is appointing an ambassador for First Nations peoples to guide the development of a First Nations foreign policy agenda and to strengthen our ties internationally. Another focus of our foreign policy agenda is our relationship with our partners in the Indo-Pacific. It's natural that Australia has a strong focus in this region. For Australia, our geography means much of our economic orientation is towards the Indo-Pacific, but our relationship with the Americas, including Latin America and the Caribbean, continues to grow. And like this region, the Indo-Pacific relies on a strong intra-regional and multilateral rules and norms to prosper. Upholding these norms is critical to peace, stability and prosperity, where all of our countries can cooperate, trade and thrive. And I know that these elements are equally important to the countries in the OAS, and Australia looks forward to exchanging ideas with you and to continue to engage with all of you in other multilateral fora, including on climate change, a new priority for the new government. And it's great to witness the OAS's work to promote sustainable development and to address the threat posed by climate change. It's important to maintain collaboration and momentum to secure a sustainable future, and we wish all members a productive meeting ahead and look forward to the outcomes and discussions in this forum.
Thank you, Vice Minister Watts. Invito a su excelencia.
Let me invite Vladimir Maric, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Serbia.
Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Peru, Mr. Cesar Landa, Your Excellency, Mr. Luis Almagro, Secretary General of the OAS, esteemed foreign ministers, ladies and gentlemen. The Republic of Serbia has had observer status in the OAS since as far back as 2002, and thus a great honor to be part of the forum that defines the agenda of the Western Hemisphere in the field of democracy, peace, human rights, security, respect for the principles of the United Nations and international law, the sovereignty of states, cooperation and solidarity. The Republic of Serbia invests efforts towards strengthening the friendly relations and cooperations with OAS member states and will seek to establish even closer friendly ties and renew and strengthen cooperation based on mutual interests. The Republic of Serbia highly values the capacities of the OAS to recognize, articulate and translate into concrete programs the needs of member states in terms of integral development. In this regard, we strive to annually contribute to integral development programs intended for those countries that need this the most. Therefore, I would like to particularly emphasize that in the past period, the Republic of Serbia supported projects for the development of tourism and entrepreneurship, programs for the development and strengthening of the economy of countries that were most severely affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, and programs to support regional dialogue, as well as projects aimed at encouraging the participation of women in the economy and improving their status in the Caribbean countries. Furthermore, in previous years, the Republic of Serbia recognized the importance and contribution of the OAS towards the strengthening of dialogue and democratic principles and processes as a prerequisite for development and progress by encouraging such programs as well. Given that we have all gone through the hardships caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, it was a pleasure for us to be able to extend aid to some OAS members in the form of medical supplies. We are particularly proud of the decision of the government of the Republic of Serbia to provide dozens of scholarships for students from a large number of Latin American and Caribbean countries for studies at the University of Belgrade within the World in Serbia program, which contributes to better ties between our countries and to creating invaluable bonds between our peoples for the future. Climate change and its impact on our lives is one of the topics that causes concern of all of us. We fully understand the justified apprehension, especially of the Caribbean island countries when it comes to their survival, and we are ready to transfer our experience in planning timely protection from natural disasters, as well as in eliminating the consequences. The complexity of the current challenges emerging as a result of recent events in the global arena, especially in the domain of supplying food, energy and medicines, but also in the field of human rights, the fight against organized crime and the aforementioned climate change, calls for a continuous dialogue and exchange of experiences among partners at the regional and global levels. The Republic of Serbia will endeavor to continue to be a responsible partner in dialogue, exchange of experiences, and finding optimal and comprehensive solutions, sincerely believing that peace and general well-being are goals that we all share in common. It is the principle of strengthening dialogue and solving all issues through talks that the Republic of Serbia is seeking to apply as a model for solving open issues in Kosovo and Metohija. The Republic of Serbia is fully committed to dialogue because it is the only way to reach a mutually acceptable solution and achieve progress for all its citizens. In this context, we appeal to the friendly countries of Latin America and the Caribbean to contribute to the success of the Brussels dialogue between Belgrade and Pristina and the resolution of all open issues by maintaining their position of non-recognition and discouraging unilateral moves. Allow me to thank you once again for the much appreciated invitation, warm hospitality and excellent organization of this event. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Minister.
Let me offer the floor now to Samuel Spova, the Secretary of State for Political Affairs of Slovenia.
Landa, Secretary General Almagro, Ministers, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to address your forum today on behalf of the Republic of Slovenia, and we would like to thank the Organization of American States for the invitation and the Peruvian government for hospitality. We are honored to be able to follow your discussions in the next 3 days, as they will add to our understanding of the current political, economic and social developments in the Americas and of the region's views on global issues in these turbulent times where we are witness not only of an attack on a country for its territory, but an attack on the world order based on principles of the UN Charter. This year marks 30 years anniversary of Slovenia's membership in the United Nations as independent state and 19 years as observer to the OAS. We have successfully built a strong ring of friends across the globe, including with countries of North and Latin America and the Caribbean. To this end, Slovenia started a national initiative in 2018 called Latin America and the Caribbean Days for exchanging knowledge and best practices with the Latin American and Caribbean countries. Our relations are based on shared values, people-to-people and cultural ties, as well as like-mindedness in the UN and other multilateral institutions. Slovenia is prioritizing environmental and water issues such as sustainable forestry, water management, and flood prevention. There has been a growing need to address new threats to international security, and we intend to follow up issues of climate change, water and security if elected to the Security Council. While no country is immune to biodiversity loss, water stress and climate damage, we acknowledge the special vulnerability of the Caribbean region. We are contributing to the Global Environmental Facility, and we work together with like-minded countries to promote green policies, including through the Green Group, an informal group of foreign ministers promoting green policies. Slovenia was, with Costa Rica, among the key proponents of the UN General Assembly resolution on the right to a clean, healthy and sustainable environment, adopted last July in the General Assembly. We are looking forward to working together on its follow-up. On human rights, let me mention gender equality. Empowerment of women has been our lasting priority, and our minister has just declared a feminist foreign policy. We recently hosted a seminar designed for women in Venezuela and focused on their role in political peace and mediation processes. Ladies and gentlemen, let me in closure mention a key priority of Slovenia's foreign policy where we want to strengthen our cooperation with the region. That is our candidature and tenure as elected member of the UN Security Council for 2024 and 25. Slovenia has always been a firm supporter of effective multilateralism and the central role of the UN in ensuring international peace, respect for international law, and promotion and protection of human rights. Our motto, Building Trust, Securing Future, reflects our current and our common needs with climate change, health challenges, food and energy crisis at the forefront. As a small country with no vested interests and no open issues with other countries, we can contribute to rebuilding trust in order to secure our common future. As a small country, we are capable not only of listening, but of hearing the views of others. Allow me to conclude with our commitment to be a positive, transparent and inclusive partner of the region of the Americas in maintaining international peace and security. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Bogar. Invito ahora.
Let me now invite His Excellency Mirko Giuletti, Assistant Secretary of State for the Swiss Confederation. Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen ministers, Mr. Secretary General, gentlemen and ladies of the various delegations, let me begin by expressing my thanks to the Peruvian government for hosting this 52nd General Assembly of the Organization of American States. It is particularly important for Switzerland to be present this year and to confirm our commitment with multilateral diplomacy. Even if only as an observer state, Switzerland appreciates the work of the OAS and congratulates the Secretary General for your good offices in the promotion of human rights, good governance, and peaceful coexistence in the hemisphere. It might seem trivial to evoke these ideals, But the military aggression of Russia against Ukraine continues unabated and questions the very foundations of the international order that is rule-based. The lack of consideration, the lack of respect for national sovereignty is what we work to avoid. Switzerland recognizes the support expressed by the Permanent Council of the OAS in the various resolutions relative to the situation in Ukraine. The theme of this General Assembly is Together Against Discrimination and Inequality. The commitment of Switzerland in this region, whether through the OAS or through Swiss Development Cooperation, is very aligned with this, particularly after the 2 years of the pandemic. We must focus our efforts on completing the Sustainable Development Goals of 2030, and this means addressing inequalities and discrimination. For example, throughout the region, Switzerland and its partners, including in the private sector, work towards a more inclusive, more resilient, and sustainable economy. One specific measure is the creation of professional training programs. These allow young people to enter into the labor market with valuable skills and greater possibilities of finding stable employment. The commitment of Switzerland with the OAS also includes the work as a special rapporteur for freedom of expression. The inclusion of women, Afro-descendants, indigenous communities, and all other members of society is a basic principle of democracy. Our collaboration with the Department of Cooperation for Electoral Observation, Cooperation and Electoral Observation, also works along the lines of this commitment against discrimination. In the last 12 months, we have participated in electoral observer missions in Peru, Colombia, and Brazil. The DECO, together with the support of Switzerland, today elaborated the first manual in the world for electoral observers in direct democracy, and we presented this report in June in Washington. Let me again thank the team of Secretary Guerrero for this successful project. Regrettably, in some contexts, there are more immediate needs. In these cases, Switzerland works to alleviate the suffering of communities affected by natural catastrophes or health emergencies.
And in other multilateral organizations is dictated by the realization that the solution to the challenges we face cannot be designed by Switzerland alone. Tackling climate change, to cite maybe the most extreme example, requires every country to work together. But coming back to multilateralism, Switzerland is grateful to the many countries from the region which elected it to a non-permanent seat to the UN Security Council for the 2022-2023 period. We are looking forward to working with Ecuador, Brazil, and the United States at the Council.
Switzerland is pleased to be a permanent observer of the OAS and congratulates the work of the Office of the Secretary General in this regard. Thank you. I now offer the floor to His Excellency Robert Tindley, the Director for the Americas and Insular States of the United Kingdom.
Ministers, Secretary General, colleagues, it's an honour to represent the United Kingdom here, and it is an honour for the United Kingdom to be a permanent observer of the OAS. A year ago, the world gathered in Glasgow, in the United Kingdom, for COP26, to raise our ambition still further to respond to the urgent challenge of climate change. Over the year of our COP presidency, and for long before, we have worked tirelessly and closely with countries across the world and across this region to make that progress and raise that ambition. The Glasgow Climate Pact said that vulnerability should guide decisions on finance. And that is a crucial statement, as we have heard, for small island developing states, including those in the Caribbean, and one which we agree we must turn into action. And we are pushing to do so, including next week at the annual meetings in Washington. As we hand the COP presidency to Egypt next month, our commitment endures nationally and in working with this region through programmes like our Partnership for Forests, with an additional £300 million announced last year to help halt and reverse deforestation in the Amazon by 2030. So much more, as we all know, remains to be done. Since this assembly last met, President Putin has launched his illegal invasion of Ukraine. The consequences for the people of Ukraine have been heartbreaking, and their response has been formidable. They deserve and will continue to receive